evening. Welcome to the October 3rd Village Board Public Meeting. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic that stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Bazemore, Trustee Codman,
Present.
Trustee Levin,
Present.
Trustee Herrera,
Present.
and Mayor Garrity.
Present.
Okay. So we begin with a public hearing in the matter of proposed local law number 7, amending chapter 178 noise of the Village of Ossining Code.
Corporation Counsel, would you mind giving us an introduction?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, Mayor. This is a proposed amendment to Chapter 178 dealing with noise specifically relating to gas-powered leaf blowers. The amendments would include that gas-powered leaf blowers would only be used in the Village of Ossining during the periods of March 1st through June 1st and September 15th through December 15th, and that no more than 2 handheld or backpack gas-powered leaf blowers may be used at a time unless the property where the gas-powered leaf blower is to be used is at least 1/2 acre in size. This restriction will become effective December 16th of 2018. The legislation also proposes that effective January 1 of 2021, use of gas-powered leaf blowers shall at all times be prohibited on all properties that are less than 1/2 acre in size. Also, there's a provision that the operation of gas-powered leaf blowers for maintenance and testing shall not exceed more than 30 minutes in any 7-day period. Maintenance and testing shall occur during daytime hours. There will be a warning before any appearance ticket is issued, and violations of the chapter can be supported by evidence, including but not limited to timestamped photographs, videos, records of complaints, and/or sworn witness statements.
Why don't we hear from the public, and then I imagine that members of the board may have some comments.
Hello, I'm John Bell. I'm reading the statement for Susie Ross of Green Ossining. Dear Mayor Garrity and members of the Village Board, as a community-based grassroots organization, it's our mission to provide environmental, sustainable, community-wide, and develop practical methods that protect our natural resources. I am writing to express our support for the Village of Ossining's proposed leaf blower legislation. We thank you again for your ongoing efforts to improve our environment. As you consider the adoption of Local Law 7-2018, an ordinance change restricting the use of gas-powered leaf blowers, we ask that you consider the following, in addition to the information in our letter dated March 20th, 2018. 1. Green Ossining respectively requests that the board does not exempt larger properties from the proposed legislature. The negative impacts to human health and our environment from gas-powered leaf blowers do not discriminate based on property size. All properties should be held to the same standard. In addition, schools and parks hold the greatest potential to improve public health, and as such, should set the gold standard for best management landscape practices. With the window of the time that the ban may in fact be in effect, the quantity of leaves that should be mowed and leaves and grass mulched. 2. Consider an exemption for impervious surfaces. Members of the landscaping industry are required under New York state law to remove landscaping chemicals which fall onto impervious surfaces, such as driveways, parking lots, and walkways. Green Ossining advocates for chemical-free landscapes, but recognizes that this is not yet universally practiced within the Village of Ossining. We ask that the board consider permitting leaf blowers operated at half speed for use on impervious surfaces. This will create a law that allows landscapers to be in compliance with both village and state law. Hand in hand with residential professional education about chemical-free lawns, we could move forward to a more realistic adoption of responsible practices, and more below. 3, consider an exemption for cemeteries. Pete Conley, superintendent of Dale Cemetery, has stated that cemetery maintenance would be untenable without the use of leaf blowers, as particularly around headstones. We ask that the board consider permitting leaf blowers operated at half speed for work at cemeteries. In closing, Green Ossining works to educate the public about mulch mowing practices and the Leaves Alone program, in addition to the great Healthy Yard project. Educating our community about sustainable practices is important. Equitable legislature, which addresses industry restraints hand in hand with education about sustainable landscaping practices, creates the real potential for our community at large.
Thank you. I'm sorry,
Sorry,
I have to
thank
let
you.
you go. So I didn't even realize that was, it's so
Yeah.
gentle. I was just drifting off there. Okay, thank you very much. And we will have that complete letter entered into the record as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Bell, for reading that on behalf of Green Ossining. Anyone else with comments regarding the leaf blower legislation that has been proposed? Really? Surprised. Would members of the board like to comment on this? And then we will entertain whether we will keep it open or close the public hearing.
I think one of the most, I guess, some of the best testimony that we got around this was at a meeting that we had at the library where we had a lot of the local vendors or local folks that do lawn work here in Ossining come to us and talk about their concerns. And I have concerns for some of their issues. But I think ultimately this is a piece of legislation that's very important for the health and welfare of our village and for our citizens and for anyone who lives here. I'm in support of the legislation. I read the letter from Green Ossining earlier today, and I'm certainly interested in some of their commentary related to this. So I guess I would say at this point that I would ask to leave the hearing open for a little bit longer, because I certainly want to consider some of the things that I've heard since our last public hearing. But that would be my ask at this point. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment further?
I like the way the legislation's written. I would move it beyond the December 16th is the date that you have. Is it going into effect? Is that what you had?
That's correct.
But I would have moved it to give people a little bit more time for adjustment. There's adjustment in education, there's adjustment in what they have to do and in equipment that people have to get and get rid of and all that. So I had actually hoped that it would go into legislation a little bit later than that. The rest of it I'm fine with. The comments about the cemetery for me is covered by this legislation because there's a property size issue I think that we've added in. And I also just very briefly, I mean, I just saw that the note came in today and I didn't even get a chance to fully read it. But I totally echo John's words and would be in support of both the legislation, but also in having a little more time to hear about it, keeping the conversation open. So thank you.
Trustees Bazemore, Herrera, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, sure. I concur that we should keep the public hearing open. I really appreciated the detailed letter from Green Ossining today, as far as some conversations with some business owners that I'll forward, hopefully once I actually find my notes on my phone. But I think it's a good opportunity for us to really see what the feedback is and how to move forward.
I would echo the comments that previous trustees have already said. I think we should keep the public hearing open.
Okay, then I would just sort of to recap and add my 2 cents, and then if we need to make a motion to keep it open, or we just keep it open, and we'll be back here in 2 weeks to continue the public hearing, and we can accept written comments in the meantime.
We have to have a date. Do we have to have a
keep
date,
it open
date
for
certain, right? Date
Okay,
certain,
so
yeah.
just one moment. It sounds like we have a couple of considerations. Some people would like to consider what it would mean if we were to add in any of the exemptions recommended by Green Ossining, and if we were going to entertain their suggestion of removing the large property exemption, then that would make more sense for us to consider the cemetery question. And I believe our only cemetery in the village is Arda, unless we're counting Dale as ours. It's in the village, but it's a town cemetery, so I don't know whose law they have to follow.
I think
Our-
part of it, but
in the village, so I think it's
Ours
our
is in the
Yeah.
jurisdiction. So.
So is Lewis Engel.
Oh.
So, anyway, doesn't matter.
it's larger than a half acre.
Yeah, we have other legislations for more than half an acre.
Right. So we were asked to consider taking out the half acre question. But what was interesting was the expansion of it to allow for use on impervious surfaces, which is one of the concerns that was raised by folks in the landscaping industry. And we've had a number of conversations with folks in the landscaping industry, including the public meeting that Trustee Codman had referenced earlier this summer. So it sounds like we are looking for a motion to continue the public hearing until whatever is 2 weeks from now. What would that be, the 17th?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I'll just say, I also heard from someone in Yonkers. They were the first municipality, I believe, in Westchester to pass restrictions on leaf blowers. And she forwarded to me a collection of letters really focusing that they collected when they did this a couple years back regarding the health concerns. So I will circulate that to the board for our review and enter it into the record as well. Sometime in the next 2 weeks, we'll take a chance to read that as well. Okay, next public hearing, Madam Clerk.
Yes, next public hearing is in the matter of Ferncliff Manor, Inc. to establish a community residential home at 64 Revolutionary Road, Ossining, New York.
Mayor, we have here tonight folks who have noticed. We have Christian Yurzak, who is the executive director, and someone else also. I don't know anybody's name. I just want to let the board know that notice was sent out to all property owners within, I believe it was 300 feet of the house, which is at 64 Revolutionary. Those were sent out by the planning board, and it was also noticed in the Gazette. So it has gone out.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you. My name is Kristen Yurzak. As I said, I'm the executive director of Ferncliff Manor, Inc. I apologize because I have a bit of a cold. I'm going to try and.
We'll listen carefully.
Okay, great. I'd like to thank you and the board for giving me this opportunity to introduce Ferncliff Manor, Inc. to you. Ferncliff Manor, Inc. is an outgrowth of the School for Adaptive and Integrative Learning in Yonkers. The school has been in existence for 83 years. We educate children with intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities. In 2014, we opened our first group home. Up until that point, we had the way that the state system had worked, children were leaving our school at age 21 and going to group homes. There became a shortage in housing, and we ended up having children staying at our residence. One, I think, stayed until he was 27 years old, which is 6 years past the date when they're supposed to leave, which means they're taking up a desk and a bed for another child who might need to be educated. So we decided that we would jump into this home field. So it's been an experience because we don't have a lot of experience doing this, but we did learn. We learned quickly, and now we're wanting to open our second one. So we come to you asking for that you consider this individualized residential alternative, or IRA, on 64 Revolutionary Road. We know that people, when they hear about group homes opening in their areas, their neighborhoods, they have a lot of concerns. I hope that we can answer any of your concerns tonight. We're not a large organization. We're basically a very small family-run organization, which makes us very unique. The mission of our organization is to enable individuals with developmental disabilities to achieve their optimum level of independence, well-being, self-esteem, self-expression, family involvement, and community integration by providing opportunities for ongoing engagement in a variety of enriching activities and housing opportunities. 4 young men that would reside at Revolutionary Road range in age from age 21 to 27. We know these young men very well as they have been with us for years. They are very personable and considerate and will be terrific neighbors. The house will have staff on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The number of staff will vary based on time of day and activities planned. But we are planning for between 2 to 4 staff members on site at all times. We have a very well-trained and committed staff, and the oversight is operationally tiered so that the lines of communication are wide open. Just like you, the safety and security of each of our children and young adults and the neighborhood they live in is very important to us. Each of our staff members must pass a fingerprint-based background check, drug testing, and clearance to New York State's abuse and neglect database. We know that traffic and parking are concerns for the community as well, and we can assure you that we are very sensitive to this concern. The house will have 1 vehicle that will transport the young men to their activities, and the driveway has enough parking for 2 other vehicles. We expect that most of our staff will utilize public transportation and that the available parking will be sufficient for our purposes. We know that the use of public services is also a concern for the community, and we do not expect that our use of these services will be greater than the average household in Ossining. As far as renovations to the house, we've supplied some drawings. I actually have a packet for you that illustrate our plans. Most of the renovations will be to the inside of the house. As the house is located in the Sparta Historical District, we can assure you that the scope of work to be done on the exterior of the house will be in keeping with the village's requirements. As it stands right now, the exterior will get some cosmetic work, new windows, a new roof, and I believe we're going to put a stair railing by there, some stairs there. We are aware of the importance of appearance and upkeep, and we vow to ensure that the house and grounds will always be well maintained. Finally, we promise to be good neighbors and to always listen to any and all concerns that the community may have. These young men mean the world to us, and your support in allowing them to have a home that they can call their own is our hope. I'm available to answer any questions you may have for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Michelle, did you want to comment?
I work with Kristen. She's a business-in-law, and I came to work with my husband. That wasn't the population I normally worked with. But when I started working here almost 10 years ago, after I started having kids, I learned to love these guys. The guys that we're planning for are 4 guys with autism. They speak. They use public transportation. We feel where the house is located is great. It's near Arcadian. It has public transportation, and we just thought that this would be a really good opportunity for them. Also, I live in Ossining, so I would never bring anything into Ossining town. I would never put anything in there that I thought would disrupt the neighborhood. And I really felt like when we had this opportunity to buy this house, Ossining is such a great town and it's so inclusive of everybody that we listen to there's also people with developmental disabilities who have a right to, want to have a nice place to live as well.
Thank you very much. I believe we'll, does the board have any questions before we hear from the public?
I'm going to have questions, but I thought we were listening to the public first.
Yeah. So I'm pleased that you're both here and able to speak because we have spoken about this public hearing in preparation, but this is our first opportunity that the board has had to hear from you directly. So thank you very much for being here. The purpose of the public hearing is really for us to hear from community members and hear what their questions are. We may or may not be able to address their questions, but it's just really an opportunity for us to listen. So we're going to open it up now to members of the public. Anyone like to comment on the proposed group home residential facility? Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Jason, see, I live at 3 Still Court. Actually, my backyard butts up to aforementioned property. Glad that they mentioned it because, yes, the house actually is in Sparta home in the Sparta district. Is a contributing member of the Sparta Historical Properties. One of the things to note is the property is actually in the S50 single family residence, and so they're gonna have to consider looking at getting a zoning waivement for multifamily.
Actually, that's incorrect because under the law that deals with these particular homes, that is considered a family unit.
Oh, okay. All right. So
Thanks for
the
clearing that up. But
clarification, yeah.
generally, we won't interrupt. Keep going.
Gotcha,
But
no
but
problem.
if you want to set the record straight, thank you.
gotcha, no problem. Just from my own personal fence that's actually at the rear of my yard actually belongs to that property, and it's about 2 feet into my property. So, I mean, that's got to get sort of rectified, number one. Two, most of the historic homes don't really meet the setback requirements. And going past the house, it kind of looks like they may be over their setback requirements. Just as something, another thing to consider in terms of getting a variance for that. As far as the renovations you had mentioned, just the roof, some cosmetic stuff going on. What else are you going to do in terms of accessibility inside the house? Because from looking at the sales sheet, it's a 3-bedroom house, 1.5 bath, and potentially there are going to be 8 people in this house at any one given time.
Let me
people
just
residing
clarify
across-
the format. This isn't a dialogue. We want to hear your
Oh, okay, sorry.
questions
So
and then
my
any
question is
yes.
basically it's only a 3-bedroom house, 1.5 bath. Where are 4 people going to stay plus 24 around the clock people taking care of these people? So it seems a rather small house to have 8 people living inside of it.
Thank you.
And I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. And being also in the historic district, I mean, if the house is found to be over its setback lines, you have some other issues to deal with in terms of, expanding the house if it's a non-conforming use house. But it needs to sort of, you have to work through all that. But according to them, they're not going to be doing any additional expansion on the house. In terms of that. As far as some of my other questions is, there might be ample on-site parking, but there are no sidewalks around in the area. Who's going to be taking care of all the snow removal? This can be part of the on-site staff that's going to be taking care of all that.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
I think that's about all I had. So I was really just sort of concerned as far as how they're going to make this a little more accessible to these people that are going to be living here. I mean, I think it's a great idea. I have friends that have developmental needs and they live on their own, and every time I see them on Facebook, they're ranting and raving about how glad they are to be in a home like this. So, and I applaud their efforts. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Hi,
Welcome.
I'm David Shackney. I live at 7 Still Court. I forwarded this to you guys. This is an article that was in the LOHUD. It's rather alarmist about group homes and sexual offenders that are housed often in group homes in the state of New York. It's a concern, and I realize that these are people that you work with regularly and you've worked with for years, and this round of people that will be coming in are people that you vetted through your program. But what about the next round? And what about later on down the road when, if the business were to shift from your current focus to being about group homes and filling them, will that change? Will the focus go from well-vetted people from your program to sexual offenders who need a place to be integrated back into society? So I have a concern down the road where this could go. Not necessarily, I have no problem. We're not NIMBY people. We live in the shadow of the most famous correctional facility in the world. So, I mean, we're not in my backyard kind of people. But that said, it's definitely something that I think needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you for letting me address you tonight. My name is Olivia MacDonald. I've been a lifelong resident of Ossining, as well as I currently live with my parents still. I graduated from Ossining High School back in 2013, and after college I moved back. I still live with my parents. I absolutely adore Ossining. It's a great place to live, diverse place, very welcoming. My relationship to Ferncliff was rather personal one. My brother, about 7 years ago, actually transferred into the facility. He's lived there for about 7 years after just being a regular student. Once he moved in, my family and I actually got much more involved in the school. I volunteered there on the weekends, working with the kids, doing arts and craft projects. So I actually know several of the students who are moving into the facility, and they are wonderful, they're kind, they're funny. They're just really great students, and I've learned so much from them myself. And I know my family has learned from them as well, and I think that they would be an amazing addition to the community. I understand concerns that have been raised, but Ferncliff is an amazing place. The staff is fully dedicated to the students who work there, as well as interacting with the families and any members of the community who have concerns. So I just hope that you all aid Ferncliff as best you can in helping them to move these students here, because from firsthand experience, I know how hard it is for families who have special needs children once they transfer to adulthood, finding places for them to live. So please just take into consideration. It's a wonderful facility with wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you. Further comments? Okay. Corporation Counsel, this is not a forum where we need to respond to questions. I know that we heard a number of concerns about property itself, if there's pre-existing non-conforming uses or setbacks, or if there's a potential for, once it becomes a group home, to become a different kind of group home. Is there anything from a legal perspective that you feel you need to address tonight, or should we just take that into consideration and move forward?
I should just remind the board, the only element that's involved here is there a change to the nature and character of the area where the home would be located? That's the issue. It would not be an issue of variances or supposition as to what might happen in the future. That was actually an issue that was determined by a court on issues dealing with traffic and what might happen. And the court, in a case involving the city of Mount Vernon, determined that that was not, because there were no hard facts with regard to that. So it's just, we're looking at the particular facility that's being presented here with regard to it. I can say that Ms. Yurzak did provide a copy of plans, plus she gave if I may, a fairly lengthy document detailing what all the feasibility study as to what's going to be done. There will be 4 bedrooms upstairs. They're going to turn that into 4 bedrooms upstairs. Staff will be, I believe, downstairs when they're there, and they're aware of the requirements of the Historic and Architectural Design District. So that's all I have to say on that.
And if we were to close the public hearing tonight, then what would be the next step?
By the statute is worded so that 40 days after we received the request from Ferncliff, the village board has to do a couple of different things. Or I could point out they could do nothing. They could either acknowledge and say it's okay to basically proceed with the home at that location. They can approve the site. They can suggest one or more suitable sites within the jurisdiction, or they could object. But as I said, on the objection, the key thing there is they would have to basically show that the nature and character of the areas within the municipality would be substantially altered. If the village were to do nothing in the 40 days, and the 40 days here runs October the 20th, the village were to do nothing, then basically it is, as it says, if the municipality does not respond within 40 days, the sponsoring agency, in this case Ferncliff, may establish a community residence at a site recommended in its notice, which would be the 64 Revolutionary Road. So basically the board could either say that it agrees, give another location, or explain why they cannot agree. And if they do not agree, then there is an administrative procedure that ultimately would go up to the commissioner of the department with the state, and that commissioner would then make a determination.
Questions and comments from the board? Yes,
I'm
please.
sorry, John, did you say you have questions and comments? I have questions, and they're for you, and also thank you for coming in. I don't have an opinion about this. A rare comment for me, but I got to tell you, I just don't. I'm just listening, and my role here is this is a representative government, and so I'm representing constituents. There are just some questions I have, which I don't know if my constituents have, but I do. So I'm going to ask them for the record so that maybe we can get some questions either tonight or another night. So thank you for clarifying about the future piece, Corporation Counsel, because that I didn't even understand. So today, do we get taxes on this property?
Yes.
And tomorrow, if this passes, if this is a not-for-profit, you said an organization, I assume. So is a non-for-profit?
If they apply for a tax exemption, they would get a tax
As a not-for-profit, though, that would be.
It would be the property itself could come off the rolls.
Comes off the roll, right? So And again, these are questions that I think that when you are in charge of multi-million dollar budgets and people have to pay property taxes, it's I think something that does need to be answered.
I just do want to point out.
Yes,
I don't mean to
please.
interrupt.
No, please
That-
interrupt.
That's not a consideration though, in making. a
It's not a
decision.
consideration. Okay,
It's not.
all righty. Taking it off my Thank
Okay.
you. I just don't know. I'm asking questions because I think these
Happy
are
to help.
things that, okay. So parking for me, I actually drove by. I mean, I'm very familiar with Revolution Road. The parking there, even with a van, seems complicated to me. It's a real problem in many areas of this village. And I do think that does speak to changing the overall look, or whatever the words are that you were using to the property. When you do the math of the number of people, their family who will be visiting them, all the occasions that occur in anybody's life, from birthdays to milestones, staff, that is a lot of traffic. I mean, I just added up. It's at any given time somewhere around, 6 to a dozen vehicles. The van running back and forth, I don't know if that's 24 hours. I don't know what the hours are, but it's just, when I drove by there, it didn't look like there was enough parking for this many cars. And I think that does change the way the place look. I don't have the plans. I don't know if more parking will be added and what that looks like. But I do think that's a concern, and not just for the people living there. I think for the community at large. To say that people will use public transportation, given where the public transportation is and how often it runs, and one would argue doesn't run, also a challenge. I'm not saying not something you're thinking about. I'm simply saying it's a concern that I do think does change the overall property and what happens there back and forth. And so those are, for me, some of the concerns. I didn't realize how many people you can fit. It's a relatively small house, actually, and plus staff that you have there, and the responsibility that you can have staff there. I think 24 hours a day, basically. But you didn't say the van is running 24 hours a day. That's just well, because that would alleviate my parking challenge. But it doesn't if it's not really available more than a few hours. And we get that a lot. We have a lot of complexes here that have vans, and when they come in here and they talk about it from all the condo complexes and the senior homes, and then there's no van after a year, because it's expensive and all that. You don't have to answer me. I'm simply asking questions that I think should be answered. The legal issues, I think, and that does concern me. Right up the street from you in Scarborough Manor, there used to be a jitney. There no longer is a jitney. So, these things do change, regardless of whether I should look into the future. Frankly, I am concerned about that. The idea is fantastic. The age group is one that needs a lot of help. I am on a daily basis full time work in an organization that deals with special needs children and adults and seniors. So what you're doing is fantastic, but in my role here, I really am concerned about the traffic and the number of people in that small house, from all the services that it needs, from water to maintenance to garbage to the waste, everything is, I think, a concern for the community. So I'm just putting it out there for you. So thank you for coming in, at least be a part of the conversation.
Sure. So I first want to thank you for considering Ossining to make it the home of 4 new young prospective people. I don't blame you. It's a great place. In this particular project, it's despite this part of the process, that's really the Board of Trustees. I know the state really is the one who's in charge as far as what's allowed, what's not allowed. So I believe that's OCFS Stewart, if I'm correct.
OMRDD.
Oh,
Right.
okay. So, I kind of, I really appreciate that a few residents came out and expressed their concerns. I think that they were valid concerns. And I kind of look forward in learning how to, from the board perspective, this won't be probably the last time that a group identifies Ossining as being a prospective place for operations and housing. So this is really a learning experience for me going forward on how to proceed. Thank you.
Anyone on this side of the board like to? So any of the questions and concerns that were raised about that have to do with land use and approvals, that's beyond the scope of what we're considering, and that'll be handled by the appropriate land use boards, and it is a little bit different. I assume that if there are 4 people living there, whether they have 2 to 4 staff at any given time, it's not exceeding any legal limits for crowding.
That's correct.
And I think it's very clear that the folks from Ferncliff who came here today are seeking to be good neighbors. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't make clear the experience that we have learned from in another group home that opened not too long ago in the village. And it's a property, I'm not sure the exact number of residents. Perhaps it's a larger house, maybe a couple more residents, maybe there's more staff, they might have a different level of needs. But what we do know is there is a lot of concern about parking in that neighborhood. That property has much more parking readily available. The parking on this property, maybe it can fit 2 or 3 vehicles, assuming one of them is the van, and I assume the van is being used to take the residents to programs or, sure, Ms. Yurzak, yes.
Our other group home in Mount Pleasant, we don't have a van. We have a SUV, and we would probably do something similar. These guys don't have any physical disabilities that would require a van. And if there was a van, it might be a minivan. And they would be, just to be clear, during the day, they would go to a day program. Sometimes it's like vocational stuff, or it could be stuff that they would do during the day, educational. They would be picked up like in a school bus, and they probably all will go to the same day program. So that would be one pickup, drop off, morning around 8 o'clock, afternoon around 3:30, 4 o'clock. During the evenings, they would go to activities. They would have dinner. They would go to restaurants. They go to the movies. They go shopping. That would be when they would use the, well, actually not, that neighborhood is great because it's very close to shopping and all that. So they could walk. They're great guys. They're very personable. They like to shop very much. And I don't think that there would be the coming and going that I'm imagining with these 4 guys, but it would probably be a minivan or an SUV.
Thank you. I actually just was thinking about the accessibility of the vehicle and it being able to get out, because the parking in this space, even if 2 or 3 vehicles can fit, they're backed up behind each other. So human nature being what it is, nobody wants to be the car that's stuck, and nobody wants to be the one that's in the way if they know the vehicle that's in there first is going to have to get out. And so reflecting on the experience of what we've seen in the other property and the comments that were just raised by my colleague, Trustee Levin, if the reality is that there are 2 to 4 staff members, and let's say, 2 or 3 of them drove their own vehicle, they may be, at least 1 or 2 of them is probably not going to park in the parking on site. And there's a little bit of parking available on Revolutionary Road, but I'm sure it's not completely empty all the time right now. I don't know if there's overnight parking available there. So the question I would really have is, in anticipation of parking challenges, whether it's a couple of staff cars, any families that might visit, we want their family to visit. We want them to be able to welcome people into their home. It's their home for maybe as much as 6 years throughout a good chunk of their young adulthood. But right now, we have parking challenges in every neighborhood. So when we can ask questions in advance and try to come up with solutions before, for problems that we can anticipate, that would be really helpful for us. Otherwise, we're just going to look like fools for doing this again, because we did it on the other end of town and we didn't anticipate it, and it's really creating some challenges in the neighborhood. So we'd like to avoid those problems before they happen. So I don't know if there's a plan yet, if you've contacted organizations in the area where they might have parking available. Sometimes people have a relationship with a church that's down the street, or with a private property owner that has some parking, where you can make an arrangement. Those are the kind of things that would be reassuring for us to know that we're not going to create difficulties in the neighborhood.
Happy to work with on the parking issue.
Thank you. We need to close the hearing.
You can close the hearing, yes.
Any comments before we close the hearing? Motion to close? If everybody who had a chance to speak from the public had a chance to speak. Thank you. But is there anybody else that hasn't spoken that would like to speak for 4 minutes? And you're having a presentation in a moment. Just you're next. Is there anybody else who would like to speak about Ferncliff? Okay. Motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay. So next we have mayor's and trustees announcements.
Oh, it's
thought
us.
there was
Okay. Why don't we skip right to organizational announcements because we have a few visitors back. We're going to do it slightly out of order. We're going to go to item 5 and then we'll go back to item 4. Okay. And thank you very much to the folks from Ferncliff. Yes. Please, Miguel Herrera, why don't you go first and then we will welcome the folks from JCY.
Thank you. My name is Miguel Hernandez. I live at 10 North Water Street, Village of Ossining. And, excuse me, and I'd like to thank the board for this altering their schedule to accommodate me. It's greatly appreciated. Some weeks ago, I was at a village board meeting where I spoke on the value of the presence of Ossining police officers at the site of an arrest by the offices of the Immigration Customs Enforcement, otherwise known as ICE, of a person accused of being in our nation illegally. A few days later, I met with Chief Sylvester, and while I still believe that an OPD presence may be problematic or could be problematic, I did agree with him that my remarks at that meeting that officers, law enforcement officers, be they local, state, or federal, tend to stick together when things go wrong during an arrest. This was an inappropriate remark because it was a generalization. And I generally believe, I didn't mean to say that, but I generally believe that generalizations about any group of people, including police officers, is wrong. In this regard, I'm here tonight to apologize to the members of the OPD for that comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Miguel.
Welcome. We're gonna, yes, sir. We're going to onto the. We're still working on an organizational announcements. We have a very special, actually scheduled organizational announcement. We don't need the timer for this. We are hearing a presentation from the Westchester Community Partners of JCY, who they are a Family Service Society of Yonkers. And they do some really wonderful work with Reading Buddies here in Ossining. And right now they are going to be applying for a grant. And part of their grant application means that they do a public presentation of what their program includes. And so thank you very much. Ulrika, are you going to distribute for us? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Garrity, and trustees, thank you for allowing us to present. Yes, we are here to notify you of our intent to apply for CDBG money from Westchester County, and we're doing it for our Reading Buddies after school program. Ossining is one of those communities that we chose to try and get some more after school programs. In your packet is also a letter from the Ossining Public Schools stating that they would like to have this program in the district. And what Mayor Garrity was referring to is we do have a SMART program right now in Ossining. In Claremont, we also do our Summer Reading Buddies program here, which involves hundreds of students coming into the library in the summer reading one-on-one. So JCY Westchester Community Partners is Westchester's leader in intergenerational program, and we were founded in 1919 and in 2013 became a division of Family Service Society of Yonkers. Our mission is to enhance the educational experience of children in Westchester County through effective learning initiatives and the engagement of volunteer mentors. Intergenerational programs bring generations together in a meaningful and mutually beneficial manner, providing a positive role models for students and the opportunity for older adults to engage in their community and share the knowledge and insight they've gained over the years. Each generation brings something very special to the program, and everyone benefits, both the children and the adults. Our literacy programs are based on the conviction that mentoring improves literacy. Intergenerational mentoring relationships have been shown to stimulate students' academic interest and commitment and to foster socially responsible behavior. We have several intergenerational programs. SMART, which I mentioned, which is in Claremont now. This program would be our Reading Buddies After School program. We also have programs targeting the Hispanic community called Intro to America, a Summer Reading Buddies program, which is in the library for 6 weeks on Fridays. We have an open book program at Westchester Medical Center Clinic, where we give away thousands of books, and we also give them to doctors to make reading a part of every baby well visit. It's part of the National Reach Out and Read program. We have after-school programs, and we also have a Holocaust program that we do in the spring that brings over 2,400 children in to hear survivors speak, and for the children to understand the consequences of hate. So our program is a program of distinction by Generations United, and today we serve more than 8,000 students and children and seniors in 7 communities, and we have 35 programs throughout Westchester County. Reading Buddies After School is reading and homework help, obviously after school. The mentors work with the students right after in the school, and we match them up depending on the needs of both the children and the adults, and they work for about an hour. Current sites are in White Plains, Yonkers, and Greenberg. And our goal is to increase literacy skills, improve self-confidence, stimulate academic interest and commitment, and foster socially responsible behavior. And one of the reasons that we picked Ossining, not only did my kids go to school here for part of their education, and so I love the community, but also there's a tremendous need in Ossining. 11% of the students are English language learners here, an indicator of a large immigrant population who speak little or no English. 60% of the students are economically disadvantaged in the district here. Only 27% of the district students in grades 3 through 8 met state proficiency standards in the English language arts. So there is a need for a lot of support here. Racial and ethnic disparities in EL proficiency rates, 58 for whites and 20% for Hispanic and Latino students. Tremendous variation. So Reading Buddies can provide the critical and much needed extra academic literacy and social emotional support services to these students, many of whom have social and economic barriers to language and literacy. So we look forward to hopefully receiving CDBG money and coming into your community. If that's, I don't think I need approval, but I need to be in the minutes so that I can provide it to the CDBG people in the county, and from there they will recommend whether to give us the money or not. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
What is our role here?
We're just
Although
Your
Janice
role
made
is
it pretty clear, but
literally to put me in your agenda and put me in your minutes, so that I can present that to the CDBG board, and they cannot make a recommendation unless the community has approved that it's okay for them to give a CDBG money to serve your community.
And are you going around to
Yes,
others?
we went to Tarrytown on Monday. We're trying to get to Greenberg and Elmsford and Mount Kisco, but we haven't been able to reach those boards yet to allow us to present. So right now it's Tarrytown and Ossining. We asked for 5 communities for the Reading Buddies After School program.
Okay. And where does the funding come from?
CDBG is HUD money.
Okay.
Comes directly. It has no cost to you and no cost to the school system. It's money that's funneled in. In Yonkers, we get CDBG money, but Yonkers is large enough to have that. White Plains also have it, but we haven't actually ever received it from White Plains at this time. But we are in all 5 elementary schools in White Plains with an after-school program.
I'm just taking the opportunity to ask you questions. I could
Yeah.
have probably done this offline when I
Go ahead.
see you, but so English is not my first language, and and it was very difficult for me to learn English because my parents didn't speak English, and really till now I have to
Mhm.
take care of a lot of stuff, and I always thought it would make much more sense if the moms and dads of the children whose native language is other than English would also be taught at the same time. Is this a part of your program? I thought I saw intergenerational, but that's actually not what you're referring to, is it?
No, intergenerational is the mentor.
Is the
The mentor.
people who are the role
There are
models, et cetera,
programs
et
for
cetera?
adult literacy. We don't have them, I
Okay.
know, but there are programs in the area for adult literacy.
Okay.
Yeah. Our
So,
goal, what we find after the program is that many of the teachers just remark about how more comfortable the child is reading, how much more participation is in class, and that they really start, if they're old enough, start to become readers to learn instead of just learning to read, which is a real goal. We want them to enjoy reading so that they want to learn. And of course, the bottom line is that they graduate high school and become productive citizens. But we really want to, and especially in 3rd grade, because all prisons, are funded based on reading levels in 3rd grade. So we would like to make sure that these children have the opportunities to take advantage of what's available to them.
thank you, Janice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think our role is just to wish you the very best of luck in your application. And if I can be helpful in connecting with some of my counterparts in other municipalities, maybe you and I can reach out because, yeah, I don't want to take away from all of your dedication to doing great things for Ossining children, but if you can keep growing bigger and get more funding to do it in more communities, then I'm certainly happy to see my neighbors benefiting as well.
Or more. I mean, I sort of answered immediately, but I think others might also have.
Oh, are there more comments?
Yes, I just wanted, it's always great to see you, Janice, and Ossining. It's no surprise that JCY has chosen Ossining. I mean, you kind of really shared why. It's a program that we really need here. I've experienced it firsthand. The school district, the police department, town, village have really partnered together to encourage reading and overall improve our literacy rate and culture of reading. So this really falls into what we're trying to push here. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you. And I invite you all in the summer to come read. Mayor Garrity has come both summers. It's terrific. But we invite you. You can come and read with a child any Friday from 10 to 12. Thank you.
Wonderful program. Thank you. Did you want to comment?
Yeah,
further,
I would just say
Trustee
I
Bismarck?
wish you the best of luck in your funding. I was an AmeriCorps volunteer in the city of White Plains at the Ridgeway Elementary School. So Reading Buddies actually used to come in and actually work with a lot of our kids. And I have to say their reading levels did improve. And there's something about the intergenerational relationship that the kids just they cling to the adults, and it was a nice bond that actually was formed between the two. So I hope you're very successful in Kamnas.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good evening. All right, Madam Clerk, we're going backwards now, back up to number
Yes.
4.
Yes. To number 4 or mayor's and trustees announcements?
Oh, yeah, number 3.
Yes.
We really jumped
Yes.
ahead. Okay, mayors and trustees announcements. Anyone with announcements, please?
Sure. Tomorrow night is Thursday, and we're having an organ groove at the Elks Lodge. John Doty and Paul Connors, and saxophone player Matt Garrison will be there starting at 7 o'clock. Come on by. We'll have beverages and some bar snacks, and there'll be some great music. So that's tomorrow night, 118 Croton Avenue, Ossining Elks Lodge, for the Thursday night organ groove. Thanks.
Anyone else? Trustee Herrera?
As we all know, we're in the middle of Hispanic Heritage Month, and I have a fun fact for us. But before I share it, I actually want to give a special thanks and congratulations to Ana Guzman and the entire committee of Ossining Padres Hispano for a very successful inaugural Hispanic Heritage Day Festival in our downtown. I know that I saw the majority of the board there, and it was really great to be part of a great day of food, dancing, and fun. So congratulations and kudos to them. So the fact that I found today, which is pretty surprising to me and also very good to know, 1.2 million Latinos that are ages 18 and older who live in the U.S., our U.S. veterans, and that's a stat from the U.S. Department of Defense. My next announcement is really also a congratulations to the Westchester County Board of Legislators and Legislator Catherine Borgia and the Democratic Caucus for, after many, many years of advocating for a county employee earned sick leave bill. It did pass last night at the county board, and this requires companies with 5 employees or more to provide at least an hour of paid sick time for every 30 hours worked, so employees are actually earning their time. And I'm happy to say that in Westchester, it's actually going to affect over 100,000 people. You know, you had a lot of home health kit workers and fast food workers and bus monitors, people that really interact with elderly and children and people directly that were going into work sick and serving our food and treating our children and did not call out sick because they would get fired. So I really commend the board on that. Thank you.
Trustees Levin or Bazemore, any comments? Any announcements? Please.
So I just wanted to mention that on the 28th, I think my voice is shaking because I'm still freezing in here. Sorry. Jeez. On the 28th, there was a wonderful act of a donation by, and I want to just get it right, to the Westchester Land Trust by the Sisters of Hope, which are known more as the
Dominican Sisters.
Dominican Sisters. Oh, here it is. I know I wrote it down somewhere. Sorry about that. Dominican Sisters, and most of us know it as the Mariandale Center. 34 acres donated out of their 61 acres. I actually called the Westchester Land Trust, spoke to their CEO because, you know, it is Hispanic Heritage Month, and the great thing about diversity, about really being in a diverse communities, you start thinking differently than I think others in other communities. So when I went on to learn more about the Westchester Land Trust, which I know about, but wanted to see exactly what it all entailed, I saw that it was not in Spanish, and I called her up, and we had a nice conversation so that they are going to move their website to also be in Spanish along with other languages as it happens. So these little acts and these little pieces all come together when you immerse yourself in communities that I think are have so much positive efforts going on. And the festival, I think Omar did not do it justice. The food was amazing. It was food, lots of fun, more food, and lots of music. So it was really great. And I thought that the village, for the first one, I think there were a lot of people. We're going to keep it even cleaner. There were so many people coming and going on all the sides. But that to me is a sign of success. And we're going to work with that as well. So I really appreciate that. And really, that was the only thing I want to say, because I really, from an environmental point of view, when you learn about the land trust, and I encourage all of you to go on the website, where we live in the Hudson Valley, and if you've traveled to other places and see what pollution and overcrowded environments create to your health and to the future generations, going on their website and seeing the kind of work that's being done it's I think a real blessing that what happened. Were you there? I don't know.
Yes,
I
I was.
wasn't there, so I don't know. But I know I know Sandy was there. I mean, there was a real nice presence from the county and local and the folks that were here. So I just want to give a shout out there.
Well, I'll just pick up on that. It was a really, really lovely event. When we were told about it, we were told it had to be kept very hush hush. They wanted to be a big unveiling, big news when they donated or they dedicated the 34 acres to open space. And yes, there was a proclamation presented by the village and the town. County representatives and state representatives were there, but most of the people who were there, there were, thank you, a number of representatives from village management and planning. But it was largely folks from the faith community. And it was a different kind of program than we often attend. We go to a lot of political programs. We go to a lot of formal municipal programs. In this case, we blew a blessing onto seeds that will be planted in the open space. It was a lot of it was an ecumenical service bringing together a lot of unique or very special ceremonial programs from a variety of religious backgrounds. So it was a really a lovely occasion and highly unusual in our incredibly densely populated village. We're more densely populated than most cities, and for us to be able to celebrate 34 acres dedicated as open space is something to be acknowledged and celebrated for sure. I will call to folks' attention, switching gears to the upcoming Halloween season. And Chief, I imagine you may give us a little update on the actual Halloween night. So I'll just remind folks, if you are interested in attending the Forest of Fears, which happens out at Cedar Lane Park, you can go online. I believe it's forestofears.org, and you can buy your tickets now. It's taking place Friday and Saturday, I believe, October 26th and 27th. And that's been going on for a few years now, and gets better and scarier every year. It's a volunteer program with a lot of Ossining youth participate, and you do a hayride through the woods, and a little bit scary. It's a little bit wacky. I imagine I will be there again this year. And I'll also remind folks that New York State has some deadlines coming up for voter registration and absentee ballot applications. So I believe it's October 12th. The deadline for registering, the clerk is nodding her head because she knows this at least as well as I do, is the deadline for applications to update your voter registration. And actually, if you want to change your party affiliation for next year's primaries, you need to do it right now. You have 9 days left to be able to get your any voter registration updates to take effect next year, but sometimes need to update because they've moved or anything along those lines as well. And if you're going to be out of town on Tuesday, November 6th, you can apply now for an absentee ballot, and they can send it to you, or you can pick it up as you need to. And you can go online to westchesterboardofelections.com too, or Westchester Board of Elections, and get all of the blank forms and mail those in. All right, Madam Clerk.
Okay, next up we have an administrative report from Village Manager Deborah McDonald.
Thank you very much. I have a couple of things that I want to do. We are in the middle of reviewing our budgets with the department heads, and we will be publishing our list of public meetings that we're going to be holding in November with the Board of Trustees and the department heads. We will be publishing the list of exactly which departments and what time they'll be technically on the agenda, if you will, so that if you're interested in one particular department and you want to come and listen, our meetings will be at 16 Croton in the boardroom. But they were going to be on Tuesday, November 13th, and they will start at 7 p.m. and we hope to be done by 9:30. Then on Thursday, November 15th, we will start at 8:30. This will be an all-day session. We expect that to end around 5 o'clock. And then a wrap-up meeting on Monday, November 19th, to go over any questions that came up in the previous 2 days and to have open discussion. And we are looking at 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Again, the dates are November 13th, which is a Tuesday, November 15th, which is Thursday, and November 19th, which is Monday. We've been meeting with some of the department heads this week, and I think everyone is pretty excited about the new year. And, we looked last year in January where we came together and said, what do we want to accomplish this year? So if I could, I just want to go over some of the things that are in progress so that we want to draw that connection between what the investment of our public is in our community and how we're delivering good public service. I want to say that the Broadway Bridge unfortunately is delayed just slightly due to some issues that have come up. So the closure of that road is going to be delayed a little bit, but we're hoping that they can still get it done by January. But more later on that, it's just a little behind schedule. The design of the operations center redesign and the design of the water plant are on track. The water treatment plant is going through the approval process with boards and committees in the health department, but we are at 95% design on that, and we do expect to go out to bid in January or February of this year. So we're pretty excited about getting that project started. Again, we hired our park superintendent, which is something that we set out to do at the beginning of the year, and he has been with us 6 months. So, we celebrate monthly until you get to a year, and then it's yearly after that. So we're excited. And also, I think another great accomplishment that Bill brought to us is the addition of the new software. I think people are starting to catch on to that. He was telling me just today that last year only about 17% of people were using online registration and online payment. And so far with the new program, it's at 46%. So more people are using it, and we're very excited about that. And I think also the ability to see what is available to you in any language that you want has been very helpful. And the staff is very excited. There's a lot more people that can help our customers when they have questions about the programming and what they want to register for. So that's going very well. In the planning department, we hired a new planning director. Tracy Corbett has been with us 2 months. So we always forget that she's so new because she's so familiar to all of us. And we're very excited to have her on board. And you'll see in just a minute some of the things that have been delayed that we're going to be working with now that Tracy's on board. And we did complete the ETPA study, which the board was able then to take action on. In the building department, we hired our third code enforcement officer, and it's really been a joy to have 3 people that can work around the community, and she is doing a great job. And we are still looking for our second building inspector. That's been a little more difficult than we anticipated in the hiring process, and a director to oversee the whole building department. That too has proven to be a little more challenging than we had expected. But we have created some simple brochures on how to get a building permit and what your expectations are. And I think that that was another goal of ours. And it's also in Spanish. So again, another directive to have multi-language on our website so that we can reach out and touch more of our customers. In the finance department, they were able to put the online property tax payment system online. We are still reviewing some of the programs that we use for our finance and tax. So that's still in progress, but we're happy to have the online payments. We'll be going to online payments with the utility bills next. So we're pretty excited about that. We did hire a new director for our personnel and our human resources. She has been with us for 6 months, and she's doing a fabulous job. She's really connected with the directors, and I think she is really a valuable person to have on our staff. In the manager's office, Jamie Hoffman put together our website, and that continues to be developed. And one of our goals was to review and look for grants. Well, we decided to not just review and look for grants, but we wrote 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 grants during the summer. So it's for millions and millions of dollars. So unfortunately, we did not win the DRI. I'm very sad to say, but we will try that again. And timing is everything. So once we get a little bit further along in our planning and updating the comprehensive plan and putting some other things in place, you know, every step that we take will get us closer to winning that award in the future. So we will continue to look for that, but we still have 10 grants that we're waiting to hear on. So we're pretty excited about that. We are still working on the road assessment. We hope to have that done pretty soon so that we can put in the budget a strategic plan for how we're going to redo our roads, when they'll get done, and what the ratings are, if you will, on how deteriorated are the roads and which ones should be our priority. We are still in the process of reviewing all of our IMA agreements to get a better sense of exactly how all of them work. We are still looking at the assessment for all of our equipment from an IT perspective. Where are our computers? How old are they? When are they going to need to be replaced? That was another project, and that is still in the works. The update to the land use comprehensive plan and the parking analysis and the economic development strategy have not been done this year, but we were waiting on hiring Tracy. So now that that's in place, we'll be moving along with those. And we're in the process of reviewing different technologies for different departments so we can be more efficient and more customer oriented. So that's a little bit of an update on where we are on all of the initiatives that we talked about back in January as we get ready to prepare for our budget. Lastly, I wanted to talk about our boards and commissions. So we had talked about a new process for this year of advertising all of the positions that potentially could be open. And I take full responsibility for not contacting the different chairs and the people that are up for a reappointment, to let them know that we would, if they're having a great time and they love serving on the board, all we need is a letter from them saying I'd love to continue on and continue to serve in this capacity, so that we have a record that they want to stay on. We will be looking at everyone's attendance records as we go through the review, but when the announcement was made, in 1 week, we had 36 people apply to be on various boards, and we are currently up to 42. So I'm really excited to see so many people are willing to volunteer their time, and many of these said, I'll serve on various committees. So they may have picked 2 or 3, and I think that what that tells us is there's an excitement here about volunteering. So if you're listening and you're on a board, please, I'm sorry if I offended you in any way. All I need is a letter. And we do want our boards and committees to stay stable, and so we do like to have people stay on. But the board has adopted legislation that says you cannot serve more than a certain number of terms. So we are looking at some transition, and so there will be lots of openings. And I'm really excited about the number of people. The qualifications are extraordinary for the boards that they want to serve on. And that's all I have, unless you have questions.
Afraid to start because there's so much there. Looking at the clock. Macro. You mentioned a lot of new people, great stuff, but just so the public understands, net, some were replacing. So HR is a replacement for somebody retired. I just want to be clear that they're new, but some of it is replacement. So net, 1 new FTE or 2?
One code enforcement officer.
And planning, or was that a replacement?
No, that was a replacement.
Okay, so out of all of those, on the top line, it's just 1 new additional person.
Correct.
That was for 1.
But that actually isn't a new position. It was just vacant last year. It was just, we were
The
filling a
third code
vacant
enforcement
position.
officer was new. We added that last year.
Okay.
Because we only had 2 before.
Great stuff. I'm just trying to go through so that there's some sort of an understanding. You know what? I'm good.
Okay.
Manager,
ask this some.
I would just ask that if you could, the report that you gave, if you could just email it to us, or email it to me, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Oh, the update
Yes,
report?
yes.
Oh, sure. So the actual document that I haven't updated the document, but I will do that and get it to you by Friday.
Okay, thank you.
And post the updates online as well, because there is a place online where it tells us where we are.
And I'm delighted that you actually had the percentage of folks who are registering for recreation programming online now, and I think that is due to multiple reasons. Part of it is we have a much more user-friendly format. The fees for registering online are about half what they once were, and Bill is doing a great job doing outreach. I get a lot of emails telling me, and I should be paying better attention. I have to register my kids for basketball, and he made sure that I knew about it, and I have missed that registration date in the past. So I appreciate all of his outreach, and he's doing a great job at getting more programming going and making sure that folks know about it. So that's definitely a positive development. Do we have utility bills other than water that I'm not thinking of? You mentioned utility bills.
Just no.
Okay, it is water. It's just occasionally I have a blank moment, but it was just water. Okay, when you said utility bills, I wanted to make sure it was something else. All right, anybody else with questions for Debbie? That was a very rich report.
Yes, very rich indeed. So I actually will echo that. I know that we were very excited about having a new platform at the rec center, and we're seeing the fruit of that, and that people actually wanted to change on how to go through programming, how to pay for it, how to understand it. And I've also been pretty impressed and happy that we're actually doing a better job at outreaching and marketing the many programs that we offer. So kudos to Garrison on that. 10 grants left to see if we got them, so I'm crossing my fingers. Thank you. I know it was a lot of work from a lot of people in your office, so thank you and Jamie and the whole team. Road indexing. I'm very, very excited. It's kind of, we hear about roads and potholes all the time, and this is really something that will give us the opportunity to have more of a master plan when it comes to our roads. Something that we all really need and want, in a way that we could actually track it. So I look forward to kind of learning and seeing more about the possibility of how to index our roads. And then lastly, employment openings in the village. I've been noticing that they haven't really been updated. So you mentioned that we're still seeking a director and an inspector. That's not on the current vacancies. But I just want to make sure that maybe it was just like an oversight. But if we could just
It
list all our
probably is
Okay.
because it's something that I had asked Linda to work with Jamie on, and Linda's left, and now it's and I think that's something that just slipped through.
Cool. Besides that, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay. Next up, an administrative report from Corporation Counsel Stuart Kahan.
Short and sweet.
Thank you, sir.
Tonight we have
Don't tease.
my far better half will be talking to you later. So, just a couple of things. The board will be considering adopting local law 9 tonight, which is the dog tethering statute. We will also be calling for a public hearing with regard to an amendment to the Code of Ethics, which was presented last week by Board Chair Peter Madison. There are also a few other public hearings that are being called for, one with regard to the CDBG grant program, and that's actually what's basically a second public hearing that's required by the grant program as they close out the grant. And then we also have our public hearing for our 2018 sidewalk, driveway, apron, and curb assessments. So that's there. There is a zoning board of appeals meeting coming up this Tuesday. If anyone is interested, that's at 7 p.m. at the Ossining Operations Center. We've had a busy week. There was a historic preservation on Monday, EAC on Tuesday, planning the week before. All boards very busy, all boards very active.
Landlord tenant before this meeting?
That was landlord tenant tonight, yes. Correct. So those committees are all working, and I'm glad to hear from the manager the number of folks who are applying, because we have a few where we're at just quorum strength. So we're looking forward to getting people back so we can not have circumstances where we have to hold things off. So thanks.
I just realized that we forgot to announce, and I don't have the final specs, so maybe Debbie or Stuart, you could help me out, the ETPA hearing next week.
I sent a note today, Trustee Herrera, to Mr. Lesnick to just confirm, because there was a question about the location. We had been thinking perhaps the community center would be a better location to do it.
I saw him last night, and he said, "See you next week." So I just don't remember the actual finalized.
Well, my understanding is it's going to be October the 9th. It's going to be at 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
I just want to confirm with him
Next
the
Tuesday.
location. Right, because the state is responsible for sending out the notification and doing all of that. So, but it is supposed to be, and the purpose of that is to allow the Westchester County. It's actually a hearing conducted by the Westchester County Rent Guidelines Board to determine the rent increase for the first year for for Ossining, because by next year, Ossining will be with all the other 19 communities, and they'll all be considered as one. But since we came in later, they have to hold a separate public hearing.
Okay. Can we post that? I know that it's the state's responsibility, but
what I
once
will
we know.
do is I will ask Mr. Lesnick to send me the final version of the notice,
Perfect.
and then we can get it up on the site.
Thank you.
Next, we have up an administrative report from Police Chief Kevin Sylvester.
Thank you. Another busy month for the police department. We're going to do this chronologically, so we'll get to the Halloween thing at the end. We're finishing up Hunger Action Month. Tomorrow we'll be delivering. We haven't weighed it yet, but what has equated to a police car full of food. So to wrap up Hunger Action Month, we worked with Feeding Westchester, formerly known as the Westchester Food Bank, who directly impacts our community by providing services to our residents. We did a collection all month in the lobby of the police station. We then had officers participate with students from Ossining High School in a repack day, which is where donations go into Feeding Westchester and are sorted. We also participated in a couple of distribution days where the mobile food pantry comes down to Park School. So we managed to hit for the cycle there and touch the entire process. So for a look at that, you can check out all of our social media. We put up some videos, some photos, some stories about how that works. It's a fantastic program run by a local resident, and we're glad to support that. In the month of October, going back to September, not necessarily something we'll put out on social media because it's the opposite of something happening, but the construction at Park School is sufficiently moved along that we'll no longer have a road closure there during recess time. That was promised to be done by the end of September, and as promised, Superintendent Sanchez had a letter sent to me on the 30th right on time, so no further delays with that. So there will not be a delay on Everett Avenue anymore. Glad to have more streets for people to travel on. October, we have 2 programs going on. We have October is both Breast Cancer Awareness Month and Domestic Violence Awareness Month. All of our breast cancer initiatives will be coming out sometime next week. This week, we're kicking off with all of our domestic violence stuff. We're going to have an informational video coming out probably in the next couple of days. We're going to finish editing that up. We also today started a collection for that. And I know that we ask a lot of everybody, and there's constantly a need for charity in our community. But for those that have a little bit more energy left, we're looking for new and unsealed, specifically new and unsealed, and that should come as not a surprise. Boys and girls undergarments. We're looking for bedding, specifically in twin sizes, sheets, and comforters. We need diapers, sizes 4, 5, and 6, and pull-ups. These are critical needs for My Sister's Place, who provides shelter to domestic violence survivors in their time of need. So we work directly with them on a lot of different initiatives, but this one is an opportunity for them to provide services directly to the folks that we service here in the community. In terms of patrol training, we're continuing with our multi-jurisdictional patrol tactics evolution going on a couple days a week. We're spreading it out to eliminate some of the need for overtime, but working on that with Village of Croton Police Department, so good to work with our partners there. Later in the month of October, and we'll be talking about this as we go, October 20th is the PBA 5K. That's going to be taking place at Cedar Lane Park. And for extra prizes, you can race against me. And finally, on Halloween, we will have our Halloween Spooktacular Trunk or Treat. That's going to be on Main Street, and we're going to have some big announcements about stuff going on there. We're working out all of our details as we speak. All we have for today. Thank you.
You have questions?
I do. A couple of things. I know you talked about a lot of initiatives. My recollection about the web was that the village and the police department were supposed to have some sort of a sub-sites or work. I just haven't heard anything. Is there any update on that while you're both here, or should we?
We got stalled by the vendor for a little bit, but we have one sergeant dedicated working on it.
So you feel like it's coming along? Okay.
It's coming along. There are some challenges. There were a lot of things that we were trying to accomplish with that site. It doesn't look like in the format that's available to us, we're going to be able to do all of the things we want to do, but what we're trying to do before it's published is get as many of those things out there as possible so that it's a useful site rather than just one that goes up.
And if that's the case, am I to assume then that our rah-rah group from a year and a half ago who were hopeful that once the police is done, maybe the firehouses could be involved in subsides is probably not. Yeah, you weren't here even at that point. It's just. I know, but we were going to create links to those. So looking at everybody's faces, it's like not even on the radar. Okay, I'm going to take that. And I don't think we need to be in this room to discuss it. I didn't know because I just didn't hear. So now I know why I didn't hear about it. Okay.
Jamie's been a big help. She's working directly with Sergeant Donahue, and there's been some roadblocks to it, but we're moving along.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Does anybody else have questions for the chief? Okay. I'm just curious, with the Everett Avenue, the road closure at some point became not just barricades that went up, but these gates were installed. Are they still there?
You know what? I didn't drive down and check. I've been busy in the office this week.
That's
a lot
fine.
of projects. I spoke with the engineer and with our engineer, and he was going to be having some conversations, I believe, with the construction company there to see if, in fact, they need to be removed, who would be removing them, whether or not they'd be useful to us in the future, if they were just donating them. But as far as I know, I believe they're still there.
Okay. You know, it's always a balance between wanting to have safe open space for kids to play, and we were able to do that when they were limited in what they could have on the regular school property, as well as preserving access for drivers in you know, our densely populated downtown. So I'll be interested to hear how that is all shakes out now that we're into the next phase. And let me just confirm that the My Sister's Place donations, we can drop them off at the lobby here, right?
Oh, yes, same. I'm in the lobby.
Madam Clerk, I think we're setting a record here. It's almost 9 o'clock and we just got through mayors and trustees and staff announcements.
Well, I think we're back on track now. We're moving on to village board resolutions. Okay, so first up, we have approval of minutes, September 17th, 2000.
Well, we need to
Oops,
invite
sorry.
the public to comment on any of the resolutions that are on tonight's agenda. Does anybody want to comment on tonight's resolutions? Okay, we just have visitors. All right.
Okay. So, approval of minutes, September 17th, 2018, regular meeting. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby approves the minutes of the September 17th, 2018 regular meeting as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? Madam Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain. Wasn't present.
Right.
Good call.
Okay, next, approval of minutes, September 26th, 2018, executive session resolution. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby approves the resolution that was passed at the September 26th, 2018 executive session meeting as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We don't say what it is? Because we usually, that's a resolution that we would have normally passed in public. Just that we didn't determine that we were going to pass it until we were in executive session.
I think it's fine as it is.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, approval of voucher detail, October 3rd, 2018. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated October 3rd, 2018 in the amount of $400,976.21. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board?
Sure.
Please.
About $137,000 of that is for the bridge. So hopefully that's money well spent, and we're getting closer to the finish line.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Call for public hearing, New York State Community Development Block Grant Program. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby calls for public hearing in the matter of the village's current Community Development Block Grant project under the New York State Community Development Block Grant Program. The public hearing is called for Wednesday, October 17th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. in the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Austining, New York, or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second. There's a typo, I think.
Yes.
here.
Yes.
We'll correct it to 2018.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to clarify, because this is not even the first time tonight we've talked about CDBG grants, and this is, we have grant applications that the village has made that we haven't heard about yet for 3 or 4 different grant applications that we made. Well, I think it's 4, but 2 of them are pretty much the same thing in successive years. Then we heard about the JCY's School Reading Buddies. That's a CDBG grant that nonprofit is applying for. They haven't even submitted their grant yet, so we're waiting to hear about ones for the village that we submitted earlier this year. They're submitting for another round relevant to their projects. This was submitted as a partnership between the village and IFCA for upgrades to some of their properties, and they have already done the work. There's a long process of then being able to close out the grant with the state, and this is the next step in that process. Is there any more detail you think we need to provide?
No, I think that what the public can expect to hear is how the money was spent and that it was spent properly, and it's already been through a review by the state office, and we'll give an update on that, but we came through it with flying colors. So it's really just a recap of how the money was spent.
Great. Any further comments or questions? Madam Clerk.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, call for public hearing, 2018 sidewalk, driveway, apron, and curb assessments. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby calls for public hearing to take place at the Birdsall Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street in Austining, New York, on October 17th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. in the matter of sidewalk, driveway, apron, and curb assessments for 2018. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Everyone's very
We're
eager.
racing for this. We just gotta get through it.
Hey, what's
Big
better than
battle
curb
over there.
assessments? All right. Any
The big
questions or
winner of the
comments about
night.
sidewalks and curb assessments? Okay, the only thing that I'll notice is that is going to be our 3rd public hearing so far, because we kept open leaf blowers, and then now we have 2 more for our next legislative session, right? Am I keeping score correctly?
There's only one on the assessment list, so.
Oh, so there's perhaps one property owner who might actually show up and ask a question. It's like, okay, very good, Madam Clerk.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, adoption of proposed local law 9 of 2018, a local law amending chapter 75 animals of the Village of Austining Code. Whereas the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining has been considering the adoption of proposed local law 9 of 2018, titled a local law amending chapter 75 animals of the Village of Austining Code. And whereas in accordance with the New York State law and the Village of Austining Code, and having provided all requisite notice, the Board of Trustees conducted a public hearing on August 15th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. and on September 5th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. at the Birdsall-Fagan Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Austining, New York, during which time the public had an opportunity to be heard regarding the proposed local law. And whereas at the conclusion of the public hearing was closed, and whereas the proposed local law has been considered by the Board of Trustees, and it has been determined that there are no impediments to proceeding with the adoption of the local law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby adopts proposed local law 9, 2018 as local law number 6 of 2018, and directs that said local law be filed and or distributed in accord with applicable law. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
So, we don't have the actual local law in front of us, but this is the dog tethering law.
That's correct.
Okay. Because there's more than one topic of animals that has been discussed in the last year, so we need to be clear. This is regarding dog tethering. Does anybody want to comment on this before we have the roll call vote? I will just say, Stuart, thank you for becoming a resident expert on anything you could possibly want to know about legislation, existing codes throughout the entire state of New York and New Jersey. You have been really a fountain of information and helped us figure out what is the very best approach that we think we can come up with to address these concerns. And I very much appreciate it. Thank you also, Chief Sylvester, for your attention to this. It is, while we are passing a code that is going to be applicable for the entire village, it was brought to us in response to a particular circumstance that raised a number of questions far beyond the scope of what this law may even be addressing. But it is our hope and our intention to be able to provide safe community for our four-legged friends as well. That is the intention.
All those in favor?
I believe this is a roll
Sorry.
call vote because this is a law.
Okay, Trustee Bazemore,
Aye.
Trustee Codman,
Aye.
Trustee Levin,
Aye.
Trustee Herrera, Mayor Garrity.
Aye.
Okay, call for public hearing, local law 10 of 2018, titled a local law amending chapter 17, ethics code of the Village of Austining Code. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby calls for a public hearing to take place at the Birdsall-Fagan Police Court Facility, 8688 Spring Street, Austining, New York, on October 17th, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. or soon thereafter as the matter may be heard, to consider proposed local law 10 of 2018, titled a local law amending chapter 17, ethics code of the Village of Austining Code. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments on the board? I'll just say thank you very much to the Board of Ethics for looking into this. Laws are ever evolving, and it is our intention to be as responsive as we can when circumstances arise where we realize that our existing code could be better, and we want to improve it. That's exactly what this is. So thank you very much to the Board of Ethics for making their recommendation. We were able to discuss it last week, and thank you again, Corporation Counsel Kahan, for formalizing it so that we have something very simple and clear to vote on, so we can prevent at least that set of questions from arising in the future.
All those in favor?
Roll call vote.
Oh, for a public hearing.
Isn't it?
Calling for a public
It's
hearing?
just for calling for a
Oh,
public
public
hearing.
Oh gosh, is that it? Oh, I thought we were finally. Okay, you're right. I'm sorry. I was ready to move on. I was ready to move on too quickly. All right, public hearing. Yes.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
I'll be patient.
Next, resolution declaring sailboat as surplus and authorizing disposal. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining declares the following sailboat as surplus equipment and authorizes the vehicles
We'll change it
disposal?
to sailboats.
Okay. In accordance with New York State law, by sale or otherwise as is. It's a 1980 O'Day 25-foot sailboat. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Comments on the board?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Next, we have continuing business of the board.
Do we have any continuing business?
Yes. As again, sorry, as I emailed my colleagues and Corporation Counsel, I just wanted to have more of a chance on public to talk about ScreenDRE as part of the implementation of ETPA.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you, Trustee Herrera. For those who don't know, and we're going to use the the term ScreenDRE. SCRIE is Senior Citizen Rent Increase Exemption. DRIE is a Disabled Person Rent Increase Exemption. They are both found in Section 467B of the New York State Real Property Tax Law. And what they effectively do is that for individuals, in the case of senior citizens who are 62 years or older, who live in a rent-regulated apartment and have combined income at or below the income eligibility level and are paying 1/3 of their disposable income to rent, if there is a rent increase, and this applies to ETPA buildings that we're talking about, if there is a rent increase, they would be considered exempt if the person qualifies from future rent guideline board increases, maximum base rent increases, fuel cost adjustments, increases due to owner's hardship claims, and major capital improvements. They would be responsible for increases in security deposits. They would be responsible for any rent increase which results from specific requests that the tenant has made for repairs to a particular unit. In areas outside of New York City that are covered by ETPA, and that would be Nassau, Westchester, and Rockland counties, it is a local determination as to whether the municipality wishes to enact SCRIE, SCRE, or DRE. Some municipalities in Westchester have just senior citizens. Some have senior citizens and disabled individuals. A few things that it requires: if you come within that, you must have a 2-year lease renewal. You cannot be evicted for the purpose of the owner wanting to occupy the unit where any member of the household is over 62 years of age, or where one of the members of the household is disabled. Actually, not one of the members, but where the head of the household is disabled, or the head of the household is over 62. So you could have individuals under the age of 62 living there as part of the unit, but you have to have your head of the household to be over 62 to be so qualified. There are 16 communities in Westchester County that have senior citizen rent income exemption, increase exemption, and 10 communities in Westchester that have the disabled person income increase exemption. They are all ETPA communities, so there's no one who is not an ETPA community, because 467B of the tax law specifically relates to basically rent control or rent stabilization in terms of those locations. It does require, for passage, as if we would pass a local law, it would require a public hearing, and it would require, but what the village would have to determine is, one, do they want it just for senior citizens? Do they want senior citizens and disabled individuals? One of the things that the village would have to determine is what would be the combined income limit. Under the state law right now, it's a combined income limit of $50,000. So if you have a combined income limit in excess of $50,000, you're not eligible for either senior citizen or the disabled individual exemption. But it depends on the community, because one of the fact sheets that's provided by the Division of Homes and Community Renewal indicates that throughout Westchester County the numbers vary. Some go as high as 50,000, which is the current limit in the state. Others go to what were the earlier limits. 29,000 was the limit back in 2009. I should point out that the $50,000 limit, that section of the law, expires on June 30th of 2020, and at that point, that $50,000 number comes out of the law and it goes back to the $29,000 figure. With regard to folks who are disabled, it's $50,000 now, but as of June of 2020, it will be based upon a formula as to how much the individual could receive from various disability services. So it's a little bit different there. A couple of things to note in terms of how it essentially works. The head of the household would put in an application for the exemption. If approved, they will get a certificate, And that certificate will then be the basis for their rent reduction and will form the basis for the owner to get what is essentially a tax abatement. So the way it works is, and I can just read it to you here, because it basically explains it. The governing body of any municipal corporation is authorized to adopt after public hearing the local law, ordinance, or resolution providing for the abatement of taxes of said municipal corporation imposed on real property containing a dwelling unit, and this would be dwelling units covered by ETPA. And for us, it would be the important thing. Where the head of the household does not receive a monthly allowance for shelter, and assume that's to be the case, the tax abatement is in an amount that is not in excess of that portion of any increase in maximum rent, which causes such maximum rent to exceed 1/3 of the combined income of all members of the household. So basically, whatever that additional amount of rent would put them over the 1/3, that amount would essentially result in could be an abatement in taxes for the owner of that particular building, and there might be multiple people in the building. One of the things that the village manager, I think, will go into is we don't know what the numbers are in terms of what the overall expense would be, or the number of folks within the village who might be impacted by that. But that's essentially what the abatement would be, and each owner would be able to do that. Each individual has to apply every 2 years. Go ahead.
So,
Please, I'm sorry.
just to be clear, this would be the actual household. So if they're, say if a senior citizen is the head of the household, but she has her son and you know her grandson there.
Right.
If they're all making money, if the household is over that threshold,
They're not
then
eligible.
they're not eligible.
That's exactly
Okay.
correct. So one of the questions that the board would have to look at is where do you want that threshold to be? You could have that threshold, as I said, I think Pleasantville's threshold is back at like $14,000, $15,000 because that's what it was back in 2007, and they literally have not changed it. Yonkers is up to 50, which is the current threshold. But as I said, in 2020, that threshold changes. But you're right. If you have to, it's combined income. So same with someone who's disabled. It's not just that head of household. It's everybody who is there. And they define how basically what income is. That you add everything up, then you deduct all Social Security, all benefits. You come up with a number at the end, and that tells you what you're combined. And if you're under the exemption number, then if you're under the max, then you could be eligible for it.
And who does the application go to?
The application, it goes to Department of Homes and Community Renewal. Up here, it goes to the White Plains office.
Okay.
That's the office. And in fact, the application is Form RTP 13A, which you can get right online. And that's the application for senior citizen or disability rent increase exemption. And it goes to the Westchester District Office at 75 South Broadway. So they handle it through there. They would be the ones to handle the certificate. A copy of the certificate is given to the owner, and then the owner is able to use that as a means of getting an abatement on the taxes. So that's how that works. I should point out that if owners are found to be charging rent at the higher rate, even if the tenant is exempt, that's basically a rent overcharge, and you can bring an overcharge proceeding for that. There was a time where it was treble damages. It's not in the statute now, but it's basically an overcharge. In terms of the local laws throughout Westchester that have done this, municipalities have done it different ways. Some have been as simple as, if I can just find it here, some have been basically saying, we simply adopt Section 467-B of the New York Real Property Tax Law, and that's it. And we adopt the definitions and we follow it that way. Others, for example, Sleepy Hollow is one, Rye is another, are very specific. They take from 467B, which you must because you have to follow the state law, but they talk, for example, 467B has sections in there as to what do you do if someone suddenly has a drop in income. If it's a drop in income of over 20% and they've been getting an exemption, they can apply for further exemption, for example. It also has provisions what happens if the person loses their job or the person moves. For example, the state law provides that the individual moves to another rent-regulated building in the same village, they can essentially apply to carry over their exemption to that other location. And that's within the municipality. So it's not, doesn't go, if they were to go to Yonkers and then go to Sleepy Hollow, it would not be the same situation. They had to apply there, but here they could essentially have a portability of going from one to the next. But as I said, if you look at the different codes here, they're all pretty much the same because they all go into 467B. Some, however, are more specific. And I said also some only cover senior citizens and don't cover folks who are disabled. Some cover both. That's a decision that this board can make.
And when we say disabled, like what do we mean by that?
Okay,
Is there-
disability is defined as follows. I'm happy to give you that. Okay, here we go. Okay. To qualify as a person with a disability, they have to submit the documentation, and they must show that the person is either getting SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, supplemental security income benefits, SSI, a disability pension from the United States Department of Veterans Affairs, a disability pension from the Postal Service, or other types of disability benefits. So they have to demonstrate that, and this would be to the White Plains office, and that would then qualify them to be considered as head of household disabled.
Thank you.
And
What's those questions?
Well, yeah, I thank you for the detailed information, Stuart. As always, you're very thorough, and thank you for that. You know, I think this is an important program, and I believe it's a benefit that we should extend to those citizens who live in our village who are going to live in the TPA buildings. You know, I think I understand that there's a financial component. We don't necessarily know what that is, but I'm sure we would do well to look at what other municipalities are doing right now, and make a fair comparison. You know, we had some interesting discussions when our auditors came, and we talked about the excess monies that we have, and perhaps maybe setting aside some monies for this program may be a way where we could kind of start the funding for this. This is something that's pretty important to me. I think it's an important program. I think it'll continue to allow people to stay in place, and especially those who are on fixed incomes or are disabled. So, you know, I would like to make this part of the budget process, and I would certainly be interested in seeing a public hearing called, you know, fairly soon to discuss this. I certainly would like to do it within the calendar year. Those are my wishes at this point, and I interested to hear from my colleagues. Thank you.
I concur. Very well said. You know, this is an opportunity to really help a very, 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 very small percentage of our population that qualifies for these two programs, which is really one program, particularly seniors in their ability to stay here and age in place, and in the area of disability, also, you know, another area of our community that really ranges from all ages, their ability to stay here as well. I think that we should continue to explore what the financial impact will be. I know that when Mr. Lesnick was here, he said that, you know, most small municipalities like ours, like 2% of the population, actually applied and qualified. So, you know, obviously it would be great if more can qualify here, right? But because that means that we're keeping these people in our village. So I echo Deputy Mayor Codman's request to explore it, put it part of the budget process, and really have a timeline as to how to go forward, and the board can have a consideration and also all the facts that they need to make a decision. Thank you.
One thing I forgot to mention, I just should. Section 8 is not covered by this. So if anyone is receiving Section 8 vouchers, they are not covered by SCREE. So
Meaning they're not eligible to apply for
SCREE
screen and
apply
drain.
for it. I just want to make that clear.
Did you? So I just want to pick up on a couple of the statements that you made, Trustee Codman, because when you said excess money, I think you're referring to our fund balance.
Yeah.
And it was suggested that there may be benefit us designating particular portions of our fund balance to be specified for how that would be allocated forward. And I don't remember the exact what that is, but I assume that's what we're referring to. So, but the fund balance, having a healthy fund balance, is important for maintaining our excellent AA2 rating and being able to gain hold the line on taxes and see if we can do another 0% tax rate increase. Part of that is a nice healthy fund balance. And we will, I'm sure, be discussing during budget work sessions if there is any consideration for particular funds that we may want to designate. Or I would be very interested to, we spent so much time and resources doing the vacancy study here because that was a necessary step for considering ETPA, and that was a top priority for some members of the board. And though a couple of years ago we all knew what scree and dree was, it's like we forgot that that was going to be a consideration, it seems, until it was mentioned by Chuck Lesnick at our August 29th meeting. And I think it's unfortunate that we did not undertake the same kind of diligent research on those programs that we did for the vacancy study. So at this point, I also would like to see, it sounds like Corporation Counsel has already done a lot of digging and gotten a lot of information about where scree and dree is in place in Westchester. And scree seems to be a little more popular than dree. I'm not sure why. But I would be interested in finding out where and what municipalities, and not right this minute, but if I'd like to kind of do a spreadsheet, which municipalities have each of the programs, what are the limits. You said Mount Pleasant is 14,000, which is wildly different than 50,000. I mean, one of those includes a much greater portion of the population that would be eligible to apply. And then I'd be interested to know, for point of comparison for us, how many units are ETPA units in each of those municipalities, because we have an idea of how many there will be that will ultimately be eligible for in Ossining. And then how many of those, if they have 1,000 units in a given community, and we're going to have 1,200 units, how many of those are people that are taking advantage of either or both of these programs? And then what does that mean for them financially? And I believe Chuck Lesnick said that it's a much smaller percentage of units that tend to have people applying for scree and dree in Westchester than in the city. In the city, they do a significant amount of public information and outreach to encourage people to apply. And I imagine that there may be folks and organizations in Ossining that would like to take a similar approach. So if they did, would we have a better response, a more vibrant response to applying for the program than other communities in Westchester that may not really be thinking so much about ETP? When I did my initial outreach to municipalities a couple years ago to hear how they found the administration of the program in their communities. Some of them said they were in office for years before they even realized that it existed, because there are just a lot of the communities that have very few units, or it's just something that happens every year, and it's not something that they think much about. Whereas in Ossining, we've had a lot of attention and discussion about it, so I anticipate that anything that moves forward with the ETPA program will be well publicized, and folks will be keenly aware of what that may include. So the interesting part of this is that folks who are seniors and disabled, that really is a community, segment of our community that has severe limitations in what they are able to earn, which is different than the ETPA program generally, where there is no assessment of financial challenges or needs. So this is a really different philosophy and approach, and brings a different element to the value that it could be in our community. So I'm interested to see comparison in other communities. Will be, I think, a good indication of what we might be able to anticipate for the financial burden.
If I may, for that information, because I know that you have a lot of stuff that you're doing. That I know, you can call the White Plains office. I don't expect you to call each 19 municipalities. That information exists. I could FOIL it myself. But as far as the amount of units in each ETPA community, the amount of ski injury applicants, the amount of ski injury applicants that were approved and or denied. So that's already out there. So you don't actually have to do that.
And just to point out, in the instructions for folks who have to fill out the application, which is, and this is the August 18th version, so it's very, August 8th, 2018, they actually give all the municipalities
Good.
and they give the maximum income.
Excellent.
So it lists both here and for the 4 communities in Nassau County. So.
Are there any in Rockland? I'm just curious. It says they bothered to wish.
No, it's interesting. There is one in Rockland that is ETPA, but it is not
That's Screwdriver.
Screwdriver.
All right. Thank you. Further comments on this topic?
So what will be the next steps from a legal perspective?
Well, from a legal perspective, if you want to have some, I'd have to put together legislation for you folks to look at. There'd have to be a discussion as to what would you want your income, level to be. Do you want it for both disabled and do you want it for senior citizens? And then it would be just putting it together. As I said, many of these local laws are pretty much the same. There's not a lot there. And then you folks could look at it, then we can have a discussion in work session, then we call for public hearing. That would be from that. Yeah. He asked from the legal perspective. So from the obviously you want the budget, you want to know the budget numbers, but budget, keep saying budget.
So,
that's where we are. Sorry.
Madam Manager, would you like to comment on this?
We need to look at the budget impact. I know there was discussion about taking fund balance and allocating it, but that's not really how that would work. We would allocate what our taxes are going to be every year, and then we would make a deduction in taxes based on the income or the amount of deduction that we would have to give. So that would just be an annual deduction on our budget.
Fast answer.
That's it.
Thank you. Anything else in continuing business? Clerk?
Okay, next we have new business.
All right. Looks like no, we're good.
Okay, so moving on to visitor recognition.
I see someone. Welcome.
I'm Ellen Rita Kahan. I live at 83 Ganung Drive in the unincorporated area of Ossining. If anyone listening to me this evening has ever heard of National Brotherhood Week, it's probably through the sardonic wit of Tom Lehrer. But National Brotherhood Week was more than just a sarcastic song, hysterical as it was. It began as National Brotherhood Day in the 1930s, which was expanded to National Brotherhood Week. The goal was religious tolerance for Jews and Catholics. Over time, the goal of tolerance has expanded to include other forms of diversity, although not as a part of National Brotherhood Week, which officially ended in the 2000s. These include race, additional religion, sexual orientation. There are too many forms of diversity to mention them all in 3 hours, much less 3 minutes. But isn't it special? Tolerance. We're going to put up with people who are different. It sounds terrible now, but that was a laudable goal during the time of Jim Crow and lynching, at a time when the wounds of the Holocaust were still raw and seeping. Ossining has moved past tolerance. With one look at the village boards, past and present, it is clear we have reached acceptance and inclusion. Unfortunately, there are still individuals in our community who are not there, but are hopefully on that journey, in areas of this country and the world where tolerance is still a far reach. But for Ossining, well, we can take the next step and perhaps hasten the journey for those who need a nudge. We should officially celebrate our diversity. I suggest we have an official Celebration of Diversity Day or some such name that you choose. While we all have much in common, and much is spoken about that, and it's very important, our diversity gives us additional strength. In a sense, it's our superpower here. And there are many ways we could celebrate. We could arrange for people who speak different languages to get together and learn each other's languages, similar to an Ulpan concept. You're not sitting there learning, here's this word, here's that, repeat it. You're talking, you're interacting with people in that language. We could have programs to learn about different journeys, whether of a person crossing the ocean to another country or a gay person trying to come out to his or her family and friends. Perhaps a gathering fair where people can sample different cuisines and learn about different countries, a very, very, very mini Epcot. These are just 3 ideas, but with all the people who get involved in our community and with all of our blessed diversity, I suspect many more ideas would surface. And let's not stop at Ossining. Let's become a beacon and expand this to the county, the state, and the country. It won't happen overnight, but it won't happen at all if we don't start. Obrigada, arigato, gracias, merci, shukriya, danke, toda raba, shukran, spasiba. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like we should applaud. That was lovely. Thank you, Mrs. Kahan. We have more comments. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Alexis Martinez. I reside at 206 Spring Street, Apartment 1 in Ossining. I'm an Ossining native. My 2 children also go to school here. They're 11 and 5. So I'm just standing here because I definitely am in favor and support of the budget meetings being recorded. I feel like that should have been done a long time ago. The public, I feel like we have a right to know. I'm a sexual, physical, and psychological abuse survivor. So I feel like watching these kids, I've always been a class parent since my son, my oldest, was in pre-K. He actually went to school with Mayor Garrity's son, Paxton. I just feel like we need more resources. Some people want to go to school. They want to do things. They want to progress, but they don't know how. Maybe because they came from a broken home. Maybe because they were abused. I mean, I was lucky enough to get the chance to model and to dance before I had my children, and I loved it. It was a hobby. I still do it, but again, it's too expensive to have dancing classes, for example. So I was even thinking of maybe even taking out my time to volunteer at the recreation center and have a group for girls. A lot of people go through this and they don't come out because they're embarrassed or they're scared. And I just feel like there needs to be some light shed on that. Like, we want to do better, but how can we as a community? How can we? I mean, it's basically up to the children now. We have to teach them. I just felt like, that was important for me to say because I feel like our voices are not heard. And they consider Spring Street the inner city, which to me, I've lived in the city. So that's nothing compared to the city. But, it's very hard because I do have Section 8. And, you don't want to run around telling people that. But at the same time, I'm educated. Right now, unfortunately, I just got married and I had kids. And, again, I want to do better. But how can I? Is there someone that can teach me how to save my money and do better financially? Are there grants that are available to help me go back to school or other people? I'm not just speaking for me, I'm speaking in general, even for men who have, been through things. You just never know somebody's story. So I definitely agree with what you said. It definitely hit home. We need the resources. We don't have the help, and we're looked upon as if we're broken and we're forgotten, like we slipped through the cracks. So I just think that's, it's important. Sorry.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
In regards to ETPA, I just wanted to say, even though as a homeowner, I live at 7 Sabrina Lane. I've lived in Ossining for about 1.5 years now, and since then my property taxes have been increased almost $2,500, a year. I moved here, and just take into consideration as you're making your decisions that even though I'm not disabled or elderly, these decisions have significant impact on people. I've sat through this whole meeting and afraid to come to these meetings because I don't really know what's going on. And my wife and I work really hard. Just remember that we're here too. And like, you know, where does it stop? You know, $2,000, $2,500 might, you know, in a year and a half. Where is it going to be in 5 years? What are we going to do? So just remember that we're, you know, we're all dedicated and everything, but just remember us when you make these decisions. Okay? Thank you.
Anyone else want to comment this evening?
Finally, adjournment to executive session for personnel related to specific persons and discussions of matters relating to pending litigation.
Anybody, did you want to comment?
No.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please join us next week at 16 Croton Avenue. We'll be at the Village Hall for our work session. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.